Do you know what reciprocity is? Americans are now being deported. Guess where from? Should all colonized African countries exercise reciprocity and implement visa demand and requirements for citizens of all countries to apply for a visa to enter their ports? This is one of the most powerful tools or weapons the African continent has. It can use to fight back against the bullying of the US and other countries who require their citizens to have a visa to enter the United States. Multiple African countries are currently impacted by visa policy changes affecting American citizens, with some being considered for potential bans and others adjusting their policies in response to US actions. Here's a breakdown of the situation. 1. Visa validity and reciprocity. 4 African countries, namely Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Nigeria, have seen the US cut the validity of most non-immigrant visas for their citizens to a single entry, valid for only 3 months. This is a departure from previous policies that often allowed for multiple entries over a longer period. The Trump administration has been considering expanding travel bans and visa restrictions to numerous African countries. Initially, 7 African countries were already under a complete ban from entering the US: Somalia, Chad, Republic of Congo, Libya, Eritrea, Equatorial Guinea, and Sudan. Another 3 African countries, Sierra Leone, Burundi, and Togo, face partial restrictions, allowing limited US visa categories. An internal US State Department memo reportedly listed 26 additional African countries that could face travel bans or restrictions if they do not address concerns related to alleged terrorist, anti-Semitic, or anti-American activity. These countries include Angola, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Cambodia, Cameroon, Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Egypt, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia, Malawi, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, São Tomé and Príncipe, Senegal, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Travel and Tour World notes that 25 African nations are facing the threat of full or partial entry bans, including Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria, Malawi, Senegal, and Cameroon. The US has deported individuals to African countries, particularly Eswatini and South Sudan, following a Supreme Court ruling that allowed for sending deportees to third countries they may not have ties with. Nigeria has reportedly resisted pressure from the US to accept deportees who are citizens of other countries. Some African countries, like Kenya, require US citizens to obtain an electronic travel authorization, ETA, in advance of their travels. Other countries, such as Namibia, have recently ended visa-free entry for US travelers and will require visas starting April 2025. It's important to note that visa requirements for US citizens vary by country and are subject to change, according to Yellow Zebra Safaris. This information highlights a dynamic situation with ongoing shifts in visa policies and potential restrictions between the US and several African nations. It's crucial for travelers and those interested in US-Africa relations to stay informed about the latest developments. Again, the question here is, how many countries in Africa are kicking out Americans and beginning to make visa mandatory, according to Google search? As of July 26, 2025, it's not a widespread phenomenon that African countries are kicking out Americans and immediately imposing mandatory visas where they weren't required before. However, there have been some significant changes regarding visa policies between the US and several African nations, largely driven by US travel bans and visa restrictions. Chad. In response to the US imposing travel restrictions on its citizens, Chad retaliated by suspending the granting of visas to US citizens and will reportedly be canceling any visas currently being processed. Namibia. As of April 1, 2025, Namibia ended visa-free entry for US travelers, making it mandatory to apply for a visa online in advance or obtain a visa on arrival at specific ports of entry. Other potential impacts, while not explicitly stating they are kicking out Americans, several African countries could be impacted by changing visa reciprocity schedules and potential expansion of U.S. travel bans, which may necessitate visas where they were previously easier to obtain or not required. General visa requirements. It's important to remember that many African countries already require visas for U.S. citizens or offer visa on arrival options, regardless of recent policy changes. Key takeaways. Retaliation. Chad has implemented restrictions in response to U.S. policies. Policy changes. Namibia has shifted from visa-free to mandatory visas for Americans. Potential for further changes. The broader context of U.S. travel bans and visa reciprocity is creating an uncertain landscape for travel to and from some African countries. Therefore, it's not about a large number of African countries kicking out Americans, but rather a complex situation with specific examples of countries ending visa-free travel or imposing stricter visa requirements, often in response to U.S. policies. According to On the Go Tours, visa and entry requirements are subject to change, so it's always essential to check the latest information from the relevant embassy, consulate, or a reputable visa service company before traveling. Let's recap and take a closer look at this revolutionary move by several African nations. Several African countries are actively reshaping their visa requirements to promote tourism, attract foreign investment, and foster regional integration. Here's a summary of some notable changes and trends. Embracing visa openness. Benin, the Gambia, Rwanda, and Seychelles. These countries are leaders in visa openness and offer visa-free access to all African citizens. Ghana has expanded visa exemptions to several African countries like Mozambique, São Tomé and Príncipe, and non-African nations like Colombia and the Commonwealth of Dominica, signaling a broader vision for global partnerships and regional integration. Ghana has also introduced a digital visa system to streamline applications. Kenya eliminated visa requirements for citizens of most African countries and many Caribbean nations to boost tourism and strengthen regional integration. This includes nationals from countries like South Africa, Ghana, and Nigeria. Kenya has also launched a digital nomad visa to attract remote workers. Malawi introduced a visa on arrival system for tourists from select African countries. Namibia now requires travelers from 33 countries, including the UK, Germany, and the US, to obtain a visa before arrival. This is based on reciprocity, responding to similar restrictions imposed on Namibian citizens. However, Namibia has granted visa-free entry to citizens from 33 other African countries to promote regional travel. Nigeria transitioned to a fully electronic visa, e-visa system, replacing the previous visa on arrival, VOA system to simplify the application process. South Africa introduced a trusted tour operator scheme, TTOS, for travelers from China and India to simplify group visa applications and speed up processing times. This includes a 90-day visa-free entry policy for Indian nationals starting January 2025. An electronic travel authorization (ETA) system is also being rolled out to expedite visa applications. Tanzania implemented a digital arrival card (TDAC), which travelers must complete online before arrival to streamline the entry process. Zambia introduced new visa categories for investors, business people, conference attendees, and tourists visiting specific attractions to diversify its visitor base. Challenges and considerations. Despite these advancements, some challenges remain. For instance, Chad temporarily suspended visa issuance for U.S. citizens in response to the U.S. reinstating a travel ban on Chad. Also, some countries are hesitant to adopt open travel policies due to concerns about security, border control, and potential revenue losses. Overall, the trend in Africa is towards greater visa liberalization, but it's essential for travelers to stay informed about specific requirements and regulations before planning their trips. Here's a more detailed list of African countries that are reshaping their visa requirements. Recent trends in Africa show a growing movement towards more open and liberal visa policies, with several countries making significant changes to their requirements. Based on the provided search results, here are some African countries that are reshaping their visa requirements. Countries moving towards greater visa openness, including visa-free travel and simplified procedures. Benin, Burundi, Cabo Verde or Cape Verde, Comoros, Djibouti, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritania, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, Rwanda, Seychelles, Somalia, South Africa, Tanzania, Togo, shifting to e-visa, Zambia as part of the Casa Univisa, Zimbabwe as part of the Casa Univisa, countries adopting e-visa systems, Burkina Faso, Chad, Côte d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Gabon, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, Morocco, Mozambique, Nigeria, Rwanda, São Tomé and Príncipe, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe countries offering or planning digital nomad visas, Cabo Verde, Cape Verde, Mauritius, Namibia, Seychelles, Kenya, planned, South Africa, planned countries participating in regional visa initiatives, e.g., Casa Univisa, Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe countries whose citizens are facing stricter visa policies from certain other nations like the US, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria. These visa changes are driven by a combination of factors, including the need to boost tourism and foster international business ties, facilitating travel for skilled professionals and attracting foreign investment, promoting regional integration and trade within Africa, according to the African Union, addressing security concerns or diplomatic tensions. It is important to note that visa policies can be subject to change, and travelers should always verify the latest requirements before planning a trip. If you find this video informing, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your family and friends who are consistently travelers. Until the next one, safe travels.